see on some of these maps from basically City Hall to the Chelsea Courthouse, and encompasses some adjacent blocks like Park Square and a bit of Hawthorne Street and some of the side streets. And when I say comprehensive, it really is. This involves the design and plan is for complete reconstruction, which means new roadway, new sidewalks, new traffic lights, new bike lanes and bus lanes, street furniture, and trees. But it also includes all the underneath important infrastructure work, new water lines, new sewer lines, new drainage, and that includes separating a combined sewer drainage line that runs the length of Broadway. So it's a massive project. It's also quite an expensive project. The City Council, and there are council members here today, Council President Roy Abajaneda, Leo Robinson, Councilor Judith Garcia, Councilor Giovanni Recupero, I think I've named them all, who have put up significant money. I've got you, Giovanni. You've put up significant money for this project, $5 million. We also have about $6 million already set aside in debt, but that still leaves us significantly short of the overall price tag, which probably will approach about $20 million. So certainly our hope is that with this passage of this infrastructure bill, there'll be opportunity, at least for the city, to fill this gap. We are certainly moving full steam ahead with the expectation that we will eventually have full funding for this project. I will say this project meets all the priorities of the infrastructure bill. So the roadway work, the traffic count, the bus lanes, the bike lanes, that's going to enhance the safety and allow for better public transit. This is one of the busiest in the Commonwealth with the 111 bus traversing our streets. The infrastructure work, the separation of this combined sewer and drainage, that is going to improve water quality in the streets immensely, and it's going to reduce some serious public health benefits. And finally, just the economic vitality it will bring to our downtown, made up largely of minority-owned businesses. It's going to help advance economic equity in this community. And so all of those things I know are critical to the Senator. Critical to the package of that infrastructure bill. We're certainly hopeful it will pass the House and make its way to the President's signature. We know we will have all your support. So with that said, I'm going to turn now to Gladys to talk a little bit about the social service benefits that will come from this $3.5 trillion package that is now working its way through the Senate.
So I am delighted to be here as an organization that has been working very hard to promote change in our city, but also to bring about organizational change in services. So I am delighted that the Senator put all these efforts together for nonprofit organizations that do environmental justice, for organizations that do the work that Catholic does, the Boys and Girls Club, child care service, Medicaid, jobs, to the ability to create jobs. It's about time that we focus on human wealth. This generational poverty has to end, and this is the beginning. When we start putting money in communities that are very poor, in resources to communities of colors, imagine having to have free tuition for community college. That is amazing. That is something that we always talk about. There's 160 colleges and universities in Massachusetts, and none of them are free. And the price of tuition continues to be high. So our youth will never get out of generational poverty. And this is a right step. And I'm delighted that our senator is bringing it home to Chelsea because, as you know, the coronavirus hit us hard. We have very limited resources. All these organizations and our city officials pulled together to make the best out of the limited resources that we have. So once again, Senator, muchísimas gracias. Brevemente, estamos orgullosos una vez más de estar aquí con nuestro querido senador por este $1 trillón que están proponiendo traer a todos los Estados Unidos para que la persona, el averaje de personas pueda tener un poco más dinero y la riqueza del ser humano sea más diversa en vez de un enfoque tan solo a las personas que tienen más dinero. Estamos felices de que va a haber un enfoque en cuidado infantil, en trabajo y en el medio ambiente, y también la infraestructura de calles, de alcantarillados, todas estas cosas importantes para una ciudad como Chelsea. Una vez más, sumamente orgullosa de estar con todos ustedes, y gracias a nuestros políticos, a los oficiales, a las personas que trabajan con el departamento de DPW, muchísimas gracias a todos ustedes, y también a nuestros colegas que protegen el medio ambiente. Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you. Thank you, Gladys. And thank you for all the great work which you do on a daily basis, Gladys, at La Collaborativa. Thank you, Tom Ambrosino, and for all of the city leaders for everything that you do to put together a comprehensive plan that deals with all aspects of Chelsea's future. And it is an honor to be here with you today. We had our final vote yesterday at about 4:30 a.m. on Wednesday. I think today is Thursday. And I wanted to come back here to Chelsea immediately so that we could talk about all of the benefits that are in these two pieces of legislation, which we have just passed on the floor of the United States Senate. The total amount of funding in these two bills is $4.7 trillion worth of funding. And a lot of that funding is going to come to Chelsea and to its people. It's going to be here for the infrastructure that is needed to rebuild downtown Chelsea, and for the people of Chelsea, so that they can build their families and their futures, confident that the funding will be there for the programs that are central to the well-being of every member of those families. So we want to make sure that the 21st century is far better than any preceding century for the citizens of Chelsea. And in a lot of ways, these two bills, as they have been constructed, are targeted towards Chelsea and communities like Chelsea, to make sure that everyone is included, to ensure that black and brown and immigrant and poor families have the same opportunities as every other family out in the suburbs of the United States who have already made it. So this bill is an American dream bill. It's a bill that says that every city and every person in those cities is going to be given the opportunities which they need in order to succeed. And I want to thank City Manager Tom Ambrosino. I want to thank Alex Train, who is here, and with the last name Train, he understands infrastructure. He was born to talk about hard infrastructure. It's a pleasure to be in Chelsea to learn about the reconstruction of this downtown Broadway corridor and how the progress that we have made in Congress will help this project come to fruition. So on Tuesday, the United States Senate passed a $1.2 trillion bipartisan infrastructure bill that will help update our roads, bridges, highways, and transit systems in cities and towns across the country. I sit on the infrastructure and transportation committees, and I'm proud to be here to announce that my work has helped to secure nearly $8 billion for Massachusetts for these hard infrastructure projects that are needed in cities like Chelsea. And that federal funding will serve to be the down payment on the projects that make our communities safer, that make our communities more well connected. Of that $8 billion for Massachusetts, $5.3 billion is going to be used to update our roads and our bridges across the state. $2.5 billion will be for our transit system, so our commuters taking the MBTA can get to work on time, that the funding is there for the MBTA. 63 million will go for electric vehicle charging infrastructure. We know that Chelsea might not be able to afford it. The funding will be in this bill so that every city has the funding that they're going to need for the transition to an all-electric future. And $100 million is going to go to broadband access so that every community and every person in those communities has access to broadband. We learned very clearly during the pandemic how absolutely essential broadband is. We can't leave behind the people in the most remote parts of Massachusetts, but we can't leave behind people in the inner cities either. They need broadband desperately as well. So the $100 million in this bill just for Massachusetts broadband will be coming to Chelsea to help families in Chelsea be able to ensure that every child, every person has the help they need in order to access this broadband revolution. We need to ensure that that funding gets here, and we're going to work until we put that on President Biden's desk. We know that these streets and sidewalks in Chelsea are not just pathways between destinations, they're arteries of this community that connect our workers, our families, our students, and it's about time they got the help which they deserve. Projects like the reconstruction of this downtown Broadway corridor are a reminder of why robust infrastructure funding is so critical. But we're not done yet. Not only are we going to ensure the funding is there for physical infrastructure, but so are the people who use it. And we have to invest in them as well. And that's why yesterday morning at 4:30 a.m., the Senate Democrats worked together to pass a $3.5 trillion budget resolution, a generational investment in the future of our people and our planet. We know that we need to strengthen our so-called hard bricks and mortar infrastructure, but our communities will not be strong until we invest in the human infrastructure, the families, the workers, the seniors, the young people, the immigrant community that make our economy work. We know who the essential workers are, the people who had to go to work every day, who could not Zoom to work, but had to get on the bus, get on the train in order to go to work. And we have to make sure that we invest in those essential workers and their families. The residents of Chelsea have suffered injustice for too long, with dirtier air to breathe, economic inequality, racial injustice, and now with the impacts of the coronavirus pandemic. But this budget resolution confronts these intersecting crises and would finally give Chelsea families a fair shake, all while making billionaires and the ultra-wealthy pay their fair share so that the program can be there for the hard-working families of Chelsea and all across our country. This budget package will confront our climate crisis, will help clean up our air and our water, and create millions of good union jobs in the process. We can fund environmental justice mapping efforts here in Chelsea to understand the burdens of affected communities and direct our investments and our programs accordingly. There's a reason why Chelsea has one of the highest asthma rates in the United States. Look at all of the fossil fuels that are stored here. Look at all of the diesel trucks idling right now and all over Chelsea, waiting to be driven to other parts of the state. Well, we have to make sure that those environmental injustices are mapped, and then that the funding which we provide goes right into this community to remediate that environmental injustice. We're going to provide the funding and the support to monitor and address the dangers of extreme heat, toxic chemicals, polluted air, and deploy more air monitors throughout the city of Chelsea and throughout the state to build upon my work with Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley on temporary air monitors. This budget resolution will fund affordable and accessible child care to allow our parents to go to work or school without shouldering this expense alone. Child care should be an essential part of our country so that mothers and fathers know that their kids are being provided for and the federal government is helping to pay for that coverage. We also have to expand the child tax credit to continue to reduce child poverty and to ensure free kindergarten and tuition-free community college for every single child in Chelsea and all across this country. We need each child to be able to know that their future is hopeful. And in the same way, the grades 1 through 12 were free when today's adults were growing up, we have to make sure that pre-K through the first 2 years of community college are free. That's the 21st century. That's the skill set we have to guarantee to every person who wants to be able to build a future for themselves. And through this budget resolution, we want to expand Medicare to cover our seniors' eyeglasses, dental care, and hearing aids so that grandma and grandpa finally can get the affordable care they need for their teeth, for their eyes, for their ears. It should now finally be covered by Medicare, and it will be in this bill. Through the budget resolution, we want to make sure that every family can have 12 weeks of paid family leave. And in this package, we are fighting to chart a pathway to citizenship for the 11 million undocumented immigrants in our country. It is time to give certainty to the dreamers, to the TPSers, but to every other immigrant in our country that there is a pathway to citizenship. We know that they're in our schools, they serve in our military, they run our small businesses. We're a nation of immigrants, and it is time to make America home for the millions who live and work with us and whom we love. I'm the grandchild of 2 Irish immigrants to Malden. It wasn't on the scoreboard that their grandchild would be a United States Senator from Massachusetts. We have to allow every child in our country, every immigrant, to have a dream for their children, for their grandchildren, because that's why they came here. That's what this bill is going to work to make possible. We know there is much more work to do to extend justice to every person in our country. We need public transportation to be free for everyone, and I've introduced that legislation with Congresswoman Pressley. We need universal health care regardless of immigration status, and we need a Green New Deal to put combating climate crisis at the center of everything that we do. I carry the city of Chelsea. I carry the city of Chelsea with me to the floor of the Senate every day that I am there, fighting for this immigrant city. That's what we have to get now to the death of President Biden. The work has begun, the bill has passed through the Senate, and now we have to finish the job. So now I'd be happy with Gladys and Tom to take any questions which you may have.
Could you talk a little bit more about how this infrastructure bill will affect the, I love all this talk about Chelsea, and I'm not going to leave that out. But could you talk about how this might affect the whole state?
About the whole state?
The whole state, what's going to be, what might...
So there'll be funding for the MBTA, funding for the Sagamore and Bourne bridges, funding for transportation projects all across the state that have been on the drawing boards for a generation, but now the funding is going to be there in order to be able to get the job done. And so for people who are sitting in traffic every day, people who are wondering if the trains or buses are going to arrive on time, people who are wondering why their city or town can't be connected into the greater transportation system. The funding is in this bill in order to complete those projects. We know that transportation is a central issue in ensuring that people can get to work, get to the hospital, get to the school which they
It adds ambiance.
Huh?
It adds ambiance.
What'd you say?
It adds ambiance. Yes.
So,
Making sure they can get to school every day.
making sure. This is this bill. These two bills will be transformative for Massachusetts. Every community in Massachusetts, and for every family in Massachusetts. We are going to be providing the funding for the transportation, for the child care, for the educational opportunities for every family in Massachusetts. And those opportunities are the key to our future. But we have to invest. And what we're going to do with this legislation is we're going to fund programs that should have been funded for years and have it paid for by billionaires and wealthy corporations across the country. It's about time that those who are the wealthiest have benefited most from our economy are the ones that then contribute back through their taxes to make sure that everyone else gets the opportunities to their families which they deserve. And that means the transportation systems, the child care, the family leave, the free pre-K, the free tuition-free community colleges, all of it has to be there for every person in the state of Massachusetts and New England will be beneficiaries of this legislation, which is why we have to get it passed quickly through the House of Representatives and onto the President. And I see the great Senator Sal Domenico is here as well, joining us. Thank you, Sal. Any questions from?
Can you explain more what the bill do for immigrants? What you say about
what?
Immigrants? You're talking about the citizen or the funds for the new immigrant. Can you talk a little more about that?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, we're in a city of immigrants, and Gladys and La Collaborativa run programs here every single day that help this immigrant community to be able to survive and to thrive. And so we're going to be funding all of these programs that go into the hands of Gladys and La Collaborativa, but we're also going to be directly funding the programs for child care, for family leave, for the education of every child, free pre-K here in Chelsea, free community college for anyone in the city of Chelsea so that they can realize their dreams. Community college is now, without question, an integral part of that opportunity tree we have to create for every child in Massachusetts. And to the extent to which our goal is to make it free, now people will not have to work hard or full time in order to earn their tuition to be able to go to community college. They can plan to go in there for free. I think that's going to change the life trajectory of the immigrant community that otherwise might have to forsake their higher education dreams because of greed.
Senator, you know the argument that this is from the opposition, that this is all going to cost us too much and we simply can't afford this resolution. I think I know what your response to that is, but let's say it.
Well, the billionaires and the large corporations will say, well, we can't afford this. But the families of America are saying, we can't afford not to do this. We can't afford not to have a generational investment in the infrastructure along the streets, trains, roads, bridges, and to create as well a bridge in the 21st century for every family as well, to be able to reach their pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, because the educational opportunities, the help with the raising of their children will be there funded to give every single person the opportunities which they need. So from my perspective, from an arch conservative perspective, it was okay to vote for $1.5 trillion of tax breaks for the wealthy during the Trump years. It was okay to vote for $1.5 trillion of tax breaks during the Bush years. It was okay to spend $5 trillion on endless wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. But when you turn and say, but now we must invest in the people and the communities of our country, they say we can't afford to do it. Well, they got left behind for 20 years. This is our opportunity, our responsibility to make sure that we fund all of these projects and all of these families, and that we have the billionaires and the wealthy corporations pay for it, because that will ensure the prosperity, that will ensure the prosperity of our country in the 21st century. What makes our country great is our people, and we underinvest in our people for a generation. This bill ensures that once again we get right to the heart of the working of our economic system, which is the investment in people that makes it possible for us to be successful. Over the Boston Public Library, the inscription is, the best defense of a nation is the investment that is made in its people. So that's what we're about to do. We're going to defend our country and our economy by investing in people. Question from anyone? We have Senator DiDomenico who will join us. Would you like to come over, Sal, and say a few words?
Good afternoon, everyone. I also want to recognize Councilor Enya Lopez, who is here, who has joined us this afternoon as well. I'm very brief, and usually I go before the Senator, so it's not anticlimactic now coming out. That's my challenge to come late. But I just wanted to be here today to say thank you to our Senator and our delegation. Really, when you look at people who are fighting hard in D.C. and making sure they have their eye on the ball and understanding what's important to our communities, particularly here in the city of Chelsea. You know, not only the pandemic has wrapped around, as he said, many years have gone by pre-pandemic, but we haven't kept our responsibility up to our citizens. Infrastructure and capital as well. And the fact that we have this bill coming our way, and we have all of the funding, we can do some generational changes in this community, in this state, and around our country. It's a testament to the work of Senator Markey and so many others who have found consensus at a time when we don't find consensus in many places, to find a way to make sure that our communities are not getting left behind once again. So the fact that we're here today and all these great projects that Chelsea is going to benefit from, and all the great work that human services organizations are going to do, like the Bipartisan organization, that we are finally going to turn a corner and show the people who need our help the most that government actually works for them. A lot of folks have been cynical for the last 2 decades about what is coming out of D.C. and how they're going to have their voices heard. And we have been fighting the good fight. We have a delegation led by our great senator who has been fighting for decades something like this to come forward. And this is going to make real change in the city of Chelsea, and from my district, Cornwall, and for the first time in a long time throughout many of our communities throughout the country. So thank you very much. And thank you for your great leadership, because a lot of this is going to be done through the state. We'll be sending these billions of dollars to the state to be spent. And I want to thank Enyo, Javon, Roy, the great city council here in Chelsea, for all being here, for all of your hard work that you do.
Chelsea, so you can see where all of the cranes and all of the projects are going to be constructed over the next several years to transform downtown Chelsea to be able to meet the